Spaces for indie games to shine are growing, but there's an extra special one tucked away in the heart of Kyoto. This is BitSummit. It began as an event to showcase independent games hailing from Japan, but is now a celebration of indie games from all over the world. We chat about some of the coolest games we saw at the event. Games about grief, rhythmic plants, time travel, and toilet paper? Keep watching to find out what were the most exciting indie games we saw at BitSummit. This is the 20M Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the 20M Podcast. My name is Arief, your co-host of today's episode, joined by the other amazing co-host of the 20M Podcast, Rino. Rino, how are you?
Hello, I'm fine. Thank you for asking me. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for asking me. Man, what a nice, wholesome interaction that we've just kicked off this show with. What's going on with your life? How are you since the last podcast episode?
I am barely hanging on as usual. It's been a big weekend, as you might know. I was up down. I don't even know the direction relevance to Tokyo. I was in Kyoto for BitSummit, and pulling like 8 a.m. to midnight kind of days, but super fun. Yeah, super fun, and we'll get into it in a bit. But basically, I got back into Tokyo yesterday. Didn't cancel my Japanese class, so I had to wake up this morning again for my.
This is like the epitome of like you're doing, you had you went for a concert over like a weekday night, but you still have to go to school tomorrow kind of energy,
It was exactly that. Great way to bring me back down to earth, though. Great way to
just to humble you in Japanese class after meeting some amazing developers at BitSummit. Yeah, but yeah, as Rino mentioned, for those that are watching that 20M podcast, welcome. How are you, everybody? It's good to have you here. This is episode 17 of the podcast. Can you believe that, Rino? I was gonna. Can you believe that? It was kind of rhetorical, but it looked like you were gonna say something, so I didn't know if I should pause and the thing.
Nothing of value, just acknowledging it. It feels like it's been a long time, but it also feels like it's gone really fast. So 17 is a big number. It's my favorite number, actually.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'm gonna write that down. Everybody in the YouTube comments, just put down 17 so that I don't forget ever again. Every single thing I'm going to get you is 17. So we should watch 17 again with Zac Efron.
You can get me 17 mangosteens when I come back to Malaysia.
That's really weird, but yes, we'll definitely make that happen. But today's episode, everybody, is all about independent games for the most part. We want to talk a little bit about BitSummit and some of the other stuff that's been happening in our lives. But if you're a gamer that wants to, that's on the lookout for some amazing independent games, but also just wants to hear a little bit about how BitSummit was in Kyoto, which is it seems like one of the superstar of indies kind of event where everybody that not everybody, but people that could go to Japan, that is an indie developer that I love and respect, would be at BitSummit, whether it be this year or previous years. So this is such an awesome kind of thing. But Rino, you were at BitSummit. Let's talk about it. I know we want to talk about. Well, actually, how do you want to start this conversation? Where do we kick off with getting everybody listening to the podcast in on BitSummit?
We can do a quick recap of what it is for those people who aren't aware of what BitSummit is, and then I can share, I guess, some of the top. I don't know if top 5 games does justice. There was so many games, a lot that I really loved, and a lot that I didn't get around to playing. But I'll kind of do a 5 games that I thought were really cool, and then just some funny stories, as it always happens. I don't know, just stuff happens to me, and then it's yeah, okay, we'll roll with it. But I'll get straight into it. So for those of you folks who don't know what BitSummit is, it's a convention, I suppose, an event to celebrate independent games, and I think it started in 2012. So I was able to catch up with John Davis, who's one of the co-founders. He's a game dev, but also just someone who started this. So in around 2012, I think in Kyoto, which is where a lot of the independent game development studios are, they're kind of there's not really a space for us to gather, and we're not really talking to each other. The ecosystem is everyone's kind of in silos. So they decided to create this little showcase just mostly for Japanese independent devs to talk about what they're working on. And I think the first event was 200 people, in 2013. It was it was inside a school gym, that kind of vibe, right? It was what they were telling me. And then all the way in like 2018, like, 5 years later, it was huge, like for that size, like, 11,000 people. And then there was the pandemic where there were like, I think there was 1 year of cancellation, a couple years of online, and then maybe 1 year. I think last year was just like intimate, like business, just for business folks. But this year was like the first year they've had since the pandemic where it's like full force, we're going all out. We'll do like one business day and then 2 public days where people can come in and try the games. And it was just crazy. Like on the Saturday, which was the first public day, it's like, the lines are snaking through the first, so it's on the first floor of this event space called Makuhari Messe. Miyako Messe. Makuhari is Tokyo Game Show. So they were like snaking through on the first floor, downstairs, past the bathroom, and then all the way out the door.
My God.
Yeah, and it's so, and I need to stress, this is not super BitSummit related. It is really hot in Japan right now. Okay?
Yeah, I know. Everybody on Twitter is talking about how hot it is in Japan, so I can imagine.
More people need to know because, like, look, you level with me. Like, we're from Southeast Asia. Like, nothing should scare us when it comes to heat and humidity.
Yeah.
And I have this firsthand from Sarah from Tokyo Productions as well. So she told me when I met up with her, she said, everyone told me it was hot. I've not been to Japan in summer, and I thought, how hot can it be? And then you, Rino, talking to me, I did an Instagram story last week where I compared how hot Japan was to Malaysia and how Japan's heat temperature-wise is higher than Malaysia and humidity is actually higher than Malaysia as well, like as it was last week. And she was like, at that point, I was like, oh God, if a Malaysian is telling me it's hot, like, maybe.
It's hot, dude. Yeah.
It is boiling. Absolutely.
I'm really glad. I'm really glad Sarah whipped out the shorts as well. And I was trying to look at it. I know this sounds really like I'm just creeping around like people's Twitters and photos, but I was just like, yeah, like what's everybody's outfits looking like? How good are they looking? But also like how heat oriented they are. Because like again, you talk about video game conventions as a whole, or just like trade shows in general, and these types of things. Like the ones that we have here in Southeast Asia are hot, but like you also got to look good, right? So you do. Sometimes you might wear the long pants or whatever. But I was like eyeing when I was looking at BitSummit photos. I'm like, how hot is it in Kyoto right now? Like, how many people are wearing shorts? So it was like, it was a funny like mini game that I was doing at home.
Oh, like props to Brian on Friday. Maybe because it was the business day, he came in a shirt and long pants. I'm like, you're like the most well dressed person here. Like,
was he wearing boots too?
He was wearing boots. He was wearing his Converse. I mean, for me, dude. I was like basically in like my active wear because if like I sweat, at least like it's not so terrible. Like when that happens, but I was like, oh, props to you, Brian, for looking sharp. There should have been an award for that, like the best dressed like industry person at BitSummit.
Yeah. Like bracing through the heat. Like this is how much love and effort I put in my independent games. It's like how much I brace through the weather for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but other than the heat, I mean, like, because it is funny how like that is a pun intended here. I guess like one of the elements that make up a trade show itself, right? That's really interesting about the history of BitSummit. But how was this year's like convention? How was this year's show? Was it one of those things where you walk in the doors and it's just like, wow, like there's hundreds of people here and it's really hot? How was the energy of the show?
I mean, like, I'll preface with the fact that this was my first BitSummit. Like, again, like the last few years it was pandemic riddled, so I wasn't able to attend. But I was like pretty surprised at how like international it was. There was like a lot of independent developers from as far as like Canada, India. We got our folks from Southeast Asia. We got people from Europe. And then you also have the Japanese developers who were present there as well. And from talking to John Davis, he did say like, after the first year where even though it was just a 200 people in a gym kind of situation, like they caught a lot of attention from publications from overseas. So I think he said in the first year, like Polygon came out, IGN before IGN Japan was established came out. So because of that, I think it got a lot of international press. So from then on, it set this idea in, I guess, a lot of overseas developers, but hey, we should come check this space out. And I guess like for BitSummit, it's kind of like two ways you can look at it. Like for independent developers, it feels like there's like independent developers from overseas. It feels like there's like a real pride in getting Japanese players to play their games, presumably because we all grew up with Japanese games playing systems like PlayStation and Nintendo. So you're like, oh, like it would be great if my game would be in Famitsu or something like that. So I think that's why a lot of them come to BitSummit. And then for the Japanese developers, a lot of them were like so nice. We had some interpreters around as well who were helping facilitate the conversation. They were like amazing volunteers that everyone was very happy with. But I guess for the Japanese developers, these are like the folks who are like, they really want non-Japanese players to play their game. They want their game to go out there. So they might be looking for publishers to help them with overseas marketing, or they might just be hoping to meet, international developers. Like I know we'll get into this in some of my games, but I'll sneak one in right now. So like with Tokyo Stories, Sarah told me one of the guys from Tokyo Stories came to the Mojiken booth where they were showcasing Space with the Unbound, and he bought one of every single piece of merch.
That's awesome.
Like one, like
That's
all the
awesome.
stickers, the bottle cap, the T-shirt. He just came and was like, "I love your game." And then like later on, I think on Saturday or Sunday, Sarah was like, "Yeah, more of them came and more of them bought like all the merch." It was just phenomenal. They love A Space for the Unbound.
Yeah, I mean, just to give flowers to A Space for the Unbound. It's like I know that one was like a not an unexpected. I don't know if it was unexpected. I don't know if the devs and the publishers would call it unexpected, but it did blow up in Japan quite a lot. Obviously, like we've talked about it on the I think the third ever episode of the 20am podcast was dedicated in part to Jun Shen from Xbox, but also A Space for the Unbound for the second half of that episode. And yeah, full transparency, like we did collaborate with Mojiken and Toge for their streamer week as well. But like I know that game just hit it big in Japan because it's obviously inspired by a lot of Japanese like arts and philosophy too. But you know, even them winning the future award at was it TGS last year, if I'm not mistaken, is just awesome. But the thing that's interesting to me before we maybe get back to your thing was that there's an interesting exchange of like that you mentioned that I think is so fascinating in the world of video games where people want Japanese gamers and developers to appreciate it and play their games, but then vice versa. It's like games coming out of Japan. I know we've had a lot of history of like sometimes there are major games that released in Japan but just aren't translated into English, but they're cult classics or people still love those properties or whatever, right? So I think this is kind of like a beautiful, it's almost like diplomatic where it's kind of like it's like you're both coming from two sides of the world, if you will, but also inter exchanging the games that you make and hoping that audiences in your respective countries are attaching onto it. I think there's nothing more beautiful, especially when we talk about like independent games and trying to get your games out there, right?
Yeah, and I think the environment where it's super casual, really intimate. It's not huge like Tokyo Game Show. I mean, Tokyo Game Show is great, but you know, a lot of people are there to hear about Final Fantasy. Like, you know, at BitSummit, they did have, you know, it was sponsored by PlayStation, it was sponsored by Nintendo, and there was like Xbox presence there, but it was really very much like we're pushing out like the indies out there. So people are spending more time at the indie booths. And you're just like, really, it felt like, you know, at school science fair, you're checking out each other's little projects kind of thing at that level. And it's just like some of these people have been working in the industry for years and you're like, wow, like you're talking to me, like you're playing my game. You know, you could really feel that sort of vibe, especially from some of the devs who are like, this might not just be their first event. It's like their first time in Japan or their first time in Asia. And it's like a real trial by fire. Like I got to speak to quite a lot of people and they're just like, wow, like this country is like so wild. I'm just trying to like, you know, focus and like show my game, but I'm constantly just like bombarded with like all sorts of stimuli. So it was really, really interesting.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Can you talk to me about the booths that were present there before maybe we get into the individual games that you played, right? Because my favorite thing about trade shows is seeing how hard people go on booths. And I know some people, it's like, I mean, it's not all about the booths, right? At the end of the day, it's like, are your games accessible for people to play? Are the development staff there to help you walk through or describe the game? Or and like, are they present at the show? But it looked like they had some fun, wacky booths as well at BitSummit. Like, were there any highlights there?
They're not as huge as the Tokyo Game Show ones. Like, I mean, for me, with Tokyo Game Show last year, I always remember there was like a huge like SpongeBob, like just there. Like, okay, SpongeBob game coming out. I see that. There was a game which maybe I can just talk about now, and the booth seemed kind of simple, but it took up a lot of space because of what the gameplay was like. So the game is called Kamiganai, which is no paper, and from what I understood from the playthrough is they've put one of the Joy-Cons inside a roll of toilet paper and they give you a tray. And the gameplay is you've got to like roll the toilet paper and guide it towards people who need it. Like I don't know.
Okay.
There was like always a huge crowd there. And like I think they had
awesome.
Like toilet paper decorations sort of thing.
Imagine like the booth is just TP'd. It's like they can't tell if it's vandalized or if it's part of the marketing, you know?
Yeah. So there was that. They like wacky games always stand out, you know, whether it's because of the gameplay or because they've just got like a crazy ass booth. And the other team, Witchbeam, so they made Unpacking, but they were there showcasing Tempopo, which I'll talk about a bit later. Their game is, you know, kind of cute and it's all just like about calming music and sunshine and rainbows. So they had like a nice, like, I think the booth was specially designed. It had like a nice sort of like arch there, clouds hanging down, and then like little charms of the characters in the game like hanging there. It kind of looked like you know, like when a baby's in the cot,
Oh
and then
yeah,
they've got
yeah.
like a installation hanging over there. It was kind of like that. That was really really cool.
Look at these gamers and media people. They can't pay attention to anything, so they have to like look for
Like, what
these
the
little
heck?
toys that are. That's
Yeah.
funny.
It was very nice. But overall, I think a lot of it was just like very. I mean, like, you know, it's indie, so a lot of it's like, oh, we've got a nice poster of our game. We've got like some interesting cards that we can give out to you so you remember us, and then just like the setup. It wasn't anything like super over the top. Still very like low key.
Yeah, I think my favorite thing about attending these as well is just like getting either the freebies or the small merch that they have. Because you mentioned with the space for the Unbound, but like some of those stuff are so limited as well, especially for an independent studio where it's like, hey, we're going to make these products specifically for these events sometimes. So I feel like that it scratches the Pokemon itch in myself and maybe some of my friends too, where it's like, ooh, dude, gotta get that Cuisinier postcard because I don't know if they'll ever make that again, kind of a thing, you know.
Yeah.
But that's just a funny thing on trade shows. But Reno, enough about the trade show conference aspect of it. It was hot. There's a lot of history between it. It's supported by some of this conference, this convention, this celebration is supported by some of the biggest gaming companies in the world, but yet has a focus on independent games. Let's talk about some independent games. Like what are some of the indie games that like caught your eye there?
I was really excited to see I Miss My Friend's Studio. So the team behind Fishbowl, as some of you folks who caught the Wholesome Direct live stream with myself and Arief, both of us lost our minds at it. It was so cute. Really, really epitomizing like what wholesome means. So the two devs, Rhea and Pratik, they came out from Goa. It was just two of them. And they
That's
had
so
a
cool.
cute, yeah, they had a killer booth. They were manning it by themselves. And like every time I walked past, I could hear Pratik speaking like a bit of Japanese, and like they clearly like had prepped themselves up. It
Wow,
was really,
that's
really,
so cool.
because like, yeah, not every booth had like a lot of people. Some people it was just like one dev or something, and or they might not have support from BitSummit because they were a bit stretched. So yeah, two of them were there, and I got to play the game. I was like, oh my god, like I saw this last month on live stream, like on it's like, you know, like seeing something on TV, and then you get to
Yeah.
touch it and feel it, and then like talking to them, they were so sweet about it. So yeah, I mean, Fishbowl is what it's exactly like what we imagined it to be. You know, a really sweet story about a girl named Elo who's kind of like living alone due to various circumstances. I'm not sure if they go in the full detail, but basically it's again like a pandemic inspired story and has that theme of isolation and dealing with grief of losing someone. And then it's like peppered with sort of like mini games that happen, like say, you know, you're trying to find something and then you kind of like have to unpack it and sort of that sort of thing. Really, really great game. They're so sweet. I think a couple of folks might have tweeted like, "Oh, the nicest devs at BitSummit should go
Yeah.
to I Miss My Friend's studio." Really sweet.
They're doing such a good job on obviously one aspect of the game, but the second thing is about like, you know, when we talk about marketing budgets and like how do you market your indie game or let alone games in general and stuff like that, like I feel like they're building up this kind of street cred as being notoriously just super nice people, which is the best form of marketing that you possibly ask for, right? Where it's like you're not even trying, you're just good people, therefore like people want to be around you. But it just gives me a lot of that energy. If I'm not mistaken, I think Sophie did an interview with them on
Yes.
KKP a couple of months ago. So even that, just like having an independent game like theirs be showcased, like obviously, you know, there are cultural similarities and obviously just general similarities here in Southeast Asia, but like yeah, just so cool to see them kind of like play the field and get out there to a global market. But they seem super nice. I'm really jealous that you met them both.
They were awesome. And I guess like just to be clear for the audience, it's like I went as media, so I actually had a ton of meetings booked in with devs. And so one of my first meetings on Saturday, I think, was with Rhea. And as soon as I sat down, she was like, "Oh my god, you're like, you know, you're from the 20M podcast." I was like, "Yeah, I am." And she's like, "You know, Sophie," and she's like, "Oh, I really want to meet Arief one day." And like, "Oh, here's some merch. You can share it with him or not." I'm like, "Yeah, or not."
Yeah, you bastard. I was like, there's my ego boost jumping up. And then it's like, no, Reno won't share anything with me. Back, humbled back down.
We'll see, we'll see. But it's just like she was so sweet. She knew us, and she. I mean, we had to talk about the show on the show, but she likes the show, and she, you know, she really loved speaking with Sophie for that interview. So just great that, like, you know, everyone is so interconnected again, even through the internet. Like I feel like so many of our connections have been built that way.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'll say at that is just more so like, again, which is why I love the independent community, where there's so much excitement. I think we were talking about this right before the call started, right? But there's so much excitement on the development side when media or press get involved in highlighting and showcasing the games. But I think on our side, it's like you're the ones that are building these amazing games, so I get I try to reciprocate the excitement as much as possible. Where it's like, yeah, I mean, I think our podcast is pretty awesome, obviously, because we're super biased that way. But like whenever a different publication covers independent games, I also get really excited
It's
by
like
that.
I see your game and it's like,
Yeah.
and I like it. That, yeah, absolutely.
So, but it's such a funny relationship between like, I guess, like traditional press or media, but with developers. But at the end of the day, it's like, just get excited about independent games. But yeah, Fishbowl looks it looks awesome. I mean, like, did you have a good time playing the demo?
I almost cried. It wasn't a long demo, but it was around 10 minutes. And then I don't know what headphones they were using, but they were great because I could actually hear the music, which is a shame because not every game had that. I almost cried. And at the end, I took it off. It felt like I was resurfacing. And I was like, wow. And then Rhea looks at me and I'm like, I'm going to cry. And she's like, let me give you a hug. And she hugged me. And I was like,
oh my God, I'm going to cry. Jesus.
This is your game, man. Like, as I was playing all these games, like, is this an Arief game? I was like, this is an Arief game.
Well, I can't wait. This like catapulted it, I think, to up there in terms of like one of my most anticipated independent games, or let alone games in general. Oh, Jesus. I'm thinking of all the games that made me cry now, and I'm getting like really.
we should do an episode just like games that made Arief cry. That should be the
so absolutely. Many. Yeah, no, they're awesome. I mean, that's really cool. Anything else stand out at the your Fishbowl experience?
It was also nice to just kind of connect them with people as well. Like towards the end, I finally managed to meet Sean from Cuisiner Battle Brew Productions. He was like a legendary Pokemon, just couldn't spot him anywhere. But we finally caught up and then he asked me, I think that was the best way, like towards the second hour of Saturday to Sunday, when you just know, like, I'm not going to get to every game. You just go up to a dev you like or a friend you like, hey, what are the top 3 things you saw? So Sean was doing that to me. He's like, this is the last day. Like, what would you recommend? I said, Fishbowl's over there. Go check it out. And he was playing it. And he really liked it from what I saw. And they also had this thing where they were asking for very honest feedback on these post-its, where I gave what I thought, but I gave what I thought about the game. But I also felt like, people like Sean, people like Brian, who are actually devs, actually publishers, like they could give really good feedback. So I think Sean was able to connect with them and provide that to them as well. It was great.
I love that.
Yeah. All right, next game. All
right, we're on a roll. Let's go. What's another independent game that you saw here?
Tokyo Stories. So that was a game I've been looking forward to for so long. My history with them goes way, way back, basically 6 months ago.
Why did you like this? You said it was such a straight, almost pretty much like unjokingly. Anyway, let's proceed.
6 months on the internet is a long time, right? They came up on my Twitter feed. I don't know how, and I was really interested. All the information was basically in Japanese, and I tried to look them up in English, and I couldn't find much about them. And then I think I replied to them, or they DM me or something, and they were like, "Hey, if you want to do an interview, like, let me know." And I was like, I do want to do an interview, like, because normally, with the Japanese developers in particular, they're usually quite hush-hush about these things, especially for games that are not out yet. So I interviewed them, and that came out in January, I believe, this year on Tokyo Weekender. You guys can check it out. We'll drop a link below. But because of that, I really wanted to meet them, and I knew that they would be demoing the game, so the actual gameplay hasn't been seen yet so far. I got to check it out. Again, a beautiful narrative story. It's like 3D, but pixel art. It's set in Tokyo, so people who like Persona and like exploring Tokyo, it's just totally up your alley. It's very narrative driven. It's about looking for a friend. It has, I hate to say it has like a Kingdom Hearts vibe when it comes to like.
There we go. Our Kingdom Hearts checklist for every episode has been accomplished.
It has that vibe where the themes of like memory, friendship, love, and lost, and then telling it through these like, I don't know. It just feels like that sort of echoey light music is how I would describe it. And again, really short demo, not a lot of gameplay, but just enough to be like, to intrigue you, to be like, what's going to happen? Like, how is she going to find her friend? And then what will you actually do in the game? Because at the moment you're just kind of just walking around, going through, like, literally kind of going through your memories, like that. And the team behind it is Dracom or Durekomu. So they're a Japanese developer, but they're really excited and hopeful for the international audience to play their game.
Again, prior to the call, I watched the trailer because I've known this game by name. for so long. I think it's just being associated, or being around you, I guess, because you've talked about this game a lot on Twitter or whatever have you. But when I say people who are either watching this podcast or listening to this podcast need to watch the trailer for this title, like we'll obviously put some B-roll up here for you to see, but like watch the trailer in full, listen to the music, and like experience it, because within the 1 minute 30 seconds that I experienced right before this call, I was like, oh my god, I can't believe this flew not like under the radar, but I didn't know it was this type of game, and it just looks so magical. Like you said, it's almost like dream state, kind of like an aesthetic, if you can even call it that. But it's got like, when games just have a magic to them where you can just feel and it's like palpable. It seems like this has got some serious magic going on under the hood.
Yeah, it's very involved. If it feels like a big production. They had quite a large booth. I can't remember if it was like sponsored or what, but it was sizable, and I think it is on the scale of like independent games. It's quite a big one. So I'm not sure when it's going to come out, but there's definitely lots of layers to it. They're putting a lot of effort into this particular game.
That looks, it genuinely looks super cool. I'm quite excited for it. It's almost as if like this is like the mega hits of indie games that we're looking forward to as well, that just also happen to be at BitSummit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
All right, next on my list is a game called Tempopo from Witchbeam, the folks who made Unpacking.
That's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so this, I mentioned it earlier, they had the really cool installation as part of their booth. They were actually quite close to Brian's booth, so I saw them around a lot, and being, Australians, I felt like an affinity to them, and I was introduced to them by Will, who's ex-Cult of the Lamb, actually. So he was around just, observing, but he told me about them and told me to check it out. So Tempopo is...
What is it? I haven't seen anything about it.
It's I'm going to read their marketing script here because it's pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. It's a contemplative puzzle game about planning and execution in which you restore a harmonious garden by rescuing musical flowers across sky islands.
Oh my God.
So basically it's a whole bunch of puzzles, but everything is done in like super cute art style. Like everything's sort of rounded. Your character it says flowers, but I kind of thought it was a seed, and it just kind of like bounces, and it's one of those things where like, you press play and then it moves in a specific direction. So what you need to do is map out different points where it can turn, or where you want to drop something where it will interact with it and then therefore change direction or go. It's like an entrance and exit, and then there's a maze here, and you just need to figure out how to guide it to the exit. But the great thing about this is that the music is so wonderful. Again, it was, I played it, and then Sarah played it, and the thing that both of us did was we've got the headphones on, we've got the Steam Deck, and we're trying to play the game. But because of the music and the way that the Tempopo, which is the seed, keeps bouncing, we're like.
That's funny. Audio listeners, you want to tune into the video podcast for that one. That's hilarious.
It's really cute. And I got to speak to the team for a little bit about it. And they said, like, it is sort of an all ages game. So for the kids, we don't want to make the puzzles like stupidly difficult, because we don't want them to get frustrated. Because it is aesthetically, it is something that's going to be that kids are going to be attracted to. But it's also still a great game for adults to sort of chill, unwind, just do a couple of puzzles and, escape from life. Great game. Really, really, really like the vibe.
Yeah, I think the aesthetic looks really cool. I feel like I've only seen still images of them, and the booth. Again, it looked just like super intimate and fun. But I'm just excited because I mean, like, Unpacking was made a huge statement last year, the year before, last year, if I'm not mistaken. I guess like over the past like 12, 24-ish months, right? Yeah, so I think it's always been exciting to see what whenever you have a studio that has a huge hit on their hands, you're so happy that game exists out in the world, but also you're excited to see what they do next, kind of a scenario. So this seems like one of those. But it sounds like it was a really fun experience where it's like the gameplay itself seemed really hilarious yet kind of like addicting. Or
yeah, it's really cute, and I think it's cozy in a different way. We talked about cozy games and how they've really had like a big resurgence because of pandemic and maybe other reasons. But it's a puzzle game, but then the way that they've created the environment and the aesthetics, it makes it really cozy. So hopefully no one gets frustrated and throws their Steam Deck out the window or something like that. But yeah, great game. Really excited to play that in the full version.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one too. That's cool.
Mm-hmm. All right, next one I can talk about is Crime O'Clock by Bad Seed. So this game came under my radar because there's a just quick backstory, but like if you're a media at BitSummit, and there's a platform called Meet to Match, which connects developers with publishers or media or anything like that. So like for business purposes. So I was getting a lot of requests from different devs, and like I just wanted to take everything because I just want to hear everybody's story. Like I got time, right? So they were one of the folks who contacted me prior, and they had seen my Raincode review on GameSub. They're like, oh, we see that you like detective games. Crime O'Clock is a detective game. It's not at all like anime style. Hope that's okay. I don't know why they had to preface that, but I was like, fine.
Yeah.
But it'd be great to check it out. So I went to their booth and I checked out the game. It's like, like Where's Wally puzzles?
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, it's like that, but you're using this crazy map where everyone is doing things to find where the crime is, and then you, instead of being just in one space, you can travel backwards and forwards in time to watch it unfold, and then you can kidnap the culprit. It's a really, really interesting concept.
Cool.
Yeah. And what I liked about it was when I was playing the demo, I was terrible at it. Like I couldn't find anything, and the guy was just like, "Oh, you got to go here." It's like, "Oh, maybe you want to check that out." I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "I don't know if this girl likes detective games." But as I was discovering the map, I was looking at the little characters. So they're all drawn kind of like, I don't know, like Disney cartoon style, like a anamorphic like rabbit or cat or something. And I was like, a guy over there, I was like, is that Jafar? Like from Disney?
That's
and I
funny.
asked him, and he was like, yeah, actually, there are so many Easter eggs in our map that if you really check, like the developers are really inspired by different types of animation. That. And he's like, over here, it's like Naruto and Sakura. I was like, oh my God, it is. It's like Naruto, but he's like a bird or something. And they're just like having a little congregation, but you can tell that's who they are. Like over here, it's like what's his name? Not Tomb Raider, but the guy.
Nathan Drake from Uncharted?
No.
Oh, the guy. Oh, like
in the movie Raider? Indiana Jones. It's an Indiana Jones.
The movie. Got it.
Yeah, so all these cute little like cultural references, and they're like American, they're Japanese, and it's clear like the devs just want to put these little things. So while you're going through the map, and it can be quite tiring, you see these little things like, oh, I see that. And then they gave me a gift at the end, which was like this. I'll send you a photo so we can put it up here so people can see it. It's like a letter package, so like those sealed envelopes with like with like the soft foam on the inside.
Yes.
And they were like, "There's a Steam key in there, but you need to solve a puzzle to get the key."
Yes, that's awesome. And
I was like, "This looks really cool, but maybe I'll never." But based on my gameplay, maybe I'll never get the Steam key.
That's funny.
That was really, really cool PR package.
Yeah, that's so cool. Like, again, it just goes back to like the ingenuity of it, but also just like you have so much intimacy with the things that you produce. It's not one of those like, we'll just create a sticker for the sake of creating a sticker kind of a scenario. It's like that is genuinely awesome. I feel like that's what makes kind of like experiences a little bit more memorable as well.
Definitely.
But it shows like the artists like really care about like the core of what they're creating, and like they want people to enjoy the concepts of their games in all forms, not just like via the gameplay, right?
Yeah, so cool. Absolutely. It is hard. I mean, BitSummit is intimate, but you are meeting like hundreds of people, every day, and like everyone's giving you business cards, and you're trying to remember like, oh, what was this game about? Like, I'm telling you the story right now. Like, I remembered it because they put so much effort into the gift or like the PR presentation, that sort of thing that was really nice.
That's cool.
Yeah. And then the last game I can probably shout out about is a horror game. So very.
Oh no, I'm gonna walk out for this one, everybody. Y'all, audience, can y'all host this one? Thanks. I'm gonna move away.
Just gonna bounce. So again, a bunch of Japanese developers were matching with me, and I'm not super clued into the Japanese independent scene, but I really want to get to know it. So I was taking these meetings. So like a game came up, and it's called Shinonome. Which for folks who understand like kanji, she is like 4, and then like no, and then me is like I. And so I was telling this to like some of my Japanese friends, and they're like, even the name sounds scary. It's like like 4 eyes or something. It sounds very foreboding. So I had a meeting with one of the developers, and he was telling me about the game, but in the process of his presentation, he was doing his shokai, which is like introducing his career a little bit. And he's like, do you know a game called Final Fantasy? I was like, yes. It's like, what about Resident Evil?
I love that.
And he's like, I work there. I was It's like,
Oh, so cool. Well, like what a draw. Like, hey, do you know the small? Because like we joke about it. That's how we introduce a lot of our big titles that we cover on the 20M podcast. Like, oh, look at this tiny independent game called like Final Fantasy 16, right? But to be able to like do that, that's awesome. So the developer worked on both the Final Fantasy franchise and the Resident Evil franchise. How similar is it to like first of all, that's awesome, and like what a flex. Like I can't even be mad at like that kind of flex, you know what I mean? But yeah, what is the game at its core? Like,
so
how else did he introduce himself?
He didn't
in
stop.
The game?
He didn't stop there because he started a new company. So the guy I met, his name is Kenichi Iwao, and so he started a company called Wodan with two other veterans. And I didn't catch all of their names, but I'm sure we can write it down or put it somewhere so people will find out. But like they're all like ex like Capcom, ex like one of them worked on Fate Grand Order, which is like a huge gacha game in Japan. So there's a lot of pedigree there. But the game that they showed me was like nothing like any other games that they referenced, which is cool in a way. Maybe they just went like, fuck this AAA. We're gonna build our little game and show people what we actually want to do. It is a horror roguelike with kind of with, I guess it's like pixel art, and it's set in the Edo period. So you are like one of those like priest. I guess you're like a priest, and you're just going from room to room trying to, I guess, get rid of the spirits in each room. And so it's like, I think when you start off there's no map, but basically that it's like a square room, and then there's like different doors, you go out, and it just maps all the way up to the exit, right? And so there are different kinds of yokai, which is like Japanese like folklore, kind of like the equivalent of like the monsters in Cabaret, but for Japan. And they all need to be killed in different ways, and the maps are set in different parts of Japan. So he told me like when you travel to like Kyoto, we've done like the yokai who are from Kyoto, and then there's like the food that you eat to get buffs or to heal. Is like, and then when you go to Kyoto, we make sure that the food there is Kyoto cuisine. So there's like a lot of attention to detail and very precise like Japanese cultural elements that I think most people probably wouldn't know about. Because part of the way to kill the monsters is you got to do things like there's like a piece of paper. You might be familiar because we've got similar things in Malaysian culture. You paste it on the wall, and then the monster can't come in because it's like one of those like powerful like mystical types of like spiritual papers. And then there's like other things like caltrops and shurikens. And you're like, oh, you might want to use a shuriken instead of your gun because a shuriken makes no sound because it's like something that ninjas use. So it's like a lot of detail thought put into these different, I guess, like different types of gameplay. He's like, yeah, and you can kill the monsters in whatever way you want. So there's no like one true way that you can play it. Yeah, really, really, really cool. And now honestly scary, even though it's like pixel, even though everything's like kind of tiny and cute, it's scary.
It's just to me that's just so funny how it's like not at all like the previous games that they've worked on. But at the end of the day, I feel like again it'll come down to like probably gameplay, but also like world and level design and whatnot. But to me, that's it's so fascinating because again, when it comes to what excites me there, from what you said, is like the attention to detail aspect, where I think a lot of times like when we talk about indie games as a whole, right, it's like, oh, like do they have the budget to go in depth, or like how much do you concede and all that kind of stuff. But when art comes from a place or really stems from I guess like trying to be genuine and trying to be honest and trying to be real with like the things you're trying to represent, like that's when it gets elevated as a property. So that sounds incredibly exciting. I need to look up some footage of this game if it even exists, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'll try and drop
like,
a link if I can find it. But it's nothing
yeah.
like Cabaret, but it reminded me of Cabaret because of how like deeply ingrained like they're putting like the culture forward, and even though and it also is like a horror game as well. Normally, horror games about jump scares or about sort of like the tension. This was just about like this is like a real Japanese kind of game. Like there was like one scenario where a bit of food appeared, and I thought it was tamagoyaki, like the egg omelet. It's like, oh, I was like, tamagoyaki. It's like, oh no, this is a Kyoto cake that they don't make anymore, and like normally the shape is a different way in Tokyo. And then he's like, and then the reason why I keep saying Kyoto is because he said for BitSummit, because it's in Kyoto, we wanted to make sure the Kyoto level was done for the demo. Wow. I was like, that's so cool.
That is genuinely cool. Again, this is like artistry on another like level, right?
Yeah. Man,
that's super exciting.
That's good. And then I think that's kind of just like 5 games that I was really interested. There's so many more, and I've done a bit of a recap over on the 20M podcast Instagram stories. It's pinned, so even if you don't check it out now, you should be able to check it out a bit later as well. Make sure to take a look. There's a few other games I mentioned there.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. And like, I think the funniest thing about the story recap on Instagram was also just seeing a lot of like game dev friends. I know we've name dropped a couple of them on this episode itself, but it just, I just want to say that I got major FOMO because it was like, since before BitSummit even started, it's like, I know you're Japan based and it's like, you're going down to Kyoto. So it's like, okay, like whatever. Right. But seeing so many friends from the, like, indie scene here in Southeast Asia travel as well. It's kind of like, man, I got so jealous. But it was so cool. How was it hanging out with the rest of the independent scene outside of just seeing and showcasing their games? Like, how was that energy there? And like, was there, well, like, what did I miss out on? You know, like, let me ask you, like, what inside joke do you have to clue me into now whenever we're hanging out with our game dev friends? I need to know.
The new theme, the one that at least Sarah from Togi and I have I guess accidentally started, is just taking photos of of like group photos, but then like one person's not facing the camera. So like we can drop some like Twitter imagery, right? But like I was leaving early on Sunday and I wanted to get a nice like Southeast Asian delegation photo. So we're like, let's get Brian, let's get Sarah, let's get Sean, and let's do it. So we finally got everyone together, but then Brian's booth was quite busy at the time and it seemed like he was just never going to finish. And I was getting a bit nervous about missing my train. And like, guys, let's just take the photo. And Sean's like, let's just take it with his back. So Brian's back is like, because he's facing his booth helping someone. So, and there's three of us, we're like selfie and then like this Brian's back. And then I managed to stay around for a bit longer. And then Brian was done. And like, all right, let's take the photo. And then Sean is busy because Sean's playing Fishbowl. So we're like, let's do it again. So we have this photo on Twitter. There's three of us being like, hey, and we're kind of pointing at the back of Sean's t-shirt. There's a Cuisiner word there. Mm-hmm. And he's just like seriously like playing the game. And his video was like,
that's awesome.
So make sure you do that at Gamescom Asia or actually if we all get together for a Tokyo Game Show, that's gonna be the thing.
Yeah, and again for the games that there, it's like I know Brian was there for like promoting Everdeep Aurora, yes, which is a game that we've like covered on the 20th podcast before, which looks like super cool.
That's a good call out. I tried the demo for that as well. You're gonna love it. I
figured.
Like it's exactly like what we thought it was gonna be. A really, really cute game. It's about a cat and she just explores the underground with a little drill.
Yeah, it looks super awesome. I think like if you guys want to check out some of our preliminary thoughts or reactions to that, it was at the Wholesome Direct.
It was at the Wholesome Direct.
Yeah, so we have an episode on there we can link to. But then I know Sean from Singapore was there promoting Cuisinier, and then Sarah with the Toge crew and Mojikin from Indonesia promoting A Space for the Unbound. So I know those are all games that we've talked about it. Oh, Coffee Talk
was there with Nintendo.
Yes,
so the Coffee Talk crew were there on holidays. So they were just like everywhere. I didn't get to catch them. Yeah, they were like, we're done. We need a vacation. So they were out and about. I think they only came on Saturday, and I unfortunately missed them because I wanted them to sign my Coffee Talk photo, which you can print at Family Mart now. But they were there at the Nintendo booth, and then Cuisiner was there with Marvelous Exceed. So that's why Sean was like so hard to find because he's probably busy like playing games and eating and exploring, but like the Exceed staff members are like manning the booth, and it was super popular. Like Cuisiner looks amazing, and I think everyone is very excited for it.
It's funny. It's one of those games where it's like I've hung out with Sean a couple times. We've had a couple meals together. I have never played Cuisiner. And that's like, it's one of those things where it's like, I've been at so many shows where they're present and I've had like, friends man their booth. And it's like, I talk about of their game all the time. I try to like funnel people in. I've never actually had hands on with it. So I think it's one of those things where I can't wait to play it.
Same. Because it's so busy.
Exactly.
And people who play it can't play it for like 5 minutes. They're there for like 25 minutes and I'm standing there and like I might as well be like a staff member here. I'm like when people come by they're like, oh yeah, this is a game called Cuisiner. I'm like doing the marketing spiel. I'm becoming really good friends with the guy who's been there for the last few days. I even said bye to him on my last day. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go now.
He's so cute.
He's like, you didn't get to play the game. I'm like, I know.
It's like star-crossed lovers, your hands just like fall
me and Cuisiner. But I can leave like one really funny comment that Sean left for me when we were talking about Cuisiner. So if you've seen the art style, it's like a bunch of like sort of like anamorphic animals again, right? And he said that like he does get questions from the community being like, is this one of those furry fucking games?
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah.
And I was like, I think you should put that in your fact, like your game fact, like frequently asked questions. Is this a furry fucking game? It's like, not quite. No, it is not.
Not furry, but can be.
And there's a particularly buff character in Cuisine who's getting some very interesting like R34 fan art on the internet. He was telling me.
Is it the wolf?
It's a wolf.
I figured. How did I like? Of course,
of course.
Like that, the blue wolf, right? Is it
the
like?
Wolf.
Yeah. Stop it, Battle Brew. Stop it. Like, don't feed the fans.
But the reason why this came up was because I was asking him for his top 3 game recs at BitSummit, and he's like, "Oh, you got to check out this game, and it looks like this, it looks like that." I'm like, "Is that the Blue Wolf?" It's another blue wolf game. He's like, "Yes, the furry game over there, really good." I'm like, "Okay."
That's funny.
Yeah,
that's golden. That's golden.
BitSummit is awesome. I really hope more people check it out. It's so much more intimate. You get to really talk to devs, talk to publishers. Everyone's so candid about everything. Whether it's fuck ups, whether it's successes, everyone is like, oh, it's all luck if their game is good, or if their game is not good, it's like, oh, it would be really great if you can talk about it. Just really like honest conversations. I think that was what I loved the most. So hopefully you can come check it out again next year, Arief.
Yeah, I feel like I'm incredibly jealous. And again, like there's a difference between, I think the only thing I'll say about like this type of show is like there's a difference between this and like Gamescom Germany is coming up, right? Like very soon. And it's like, it's a completely different type of show, but all in celebration of video games at the same time, right? But I think it goes back to like the reasons why I wanted to cover games is because of the independent scene here in Southeast Asia and because of independent games. And this is just a whole spiel about like independent games and the need for independent games and all that kind of stuff. But nothing has moved me like the way some independent games have done, right, in my life. So for me, it's like the more people play these games, the more people show up to these types of shows, but also get to like interact with the developers. And I feel like at the end of the day, sometimes it's like you won't really feel an appreciation for a game until you get hands-on with it, especially because games is such a like interactive medium. So I can't urge people enough, like watch the trailers for these games, support the hell out of them, like wishlist them on Steam. I know it like always gives a good indication of like how much people are interested in their types of games, but at the end of the day, like just look out for more indie games that are coming out, because there are some of these games that you told me about that I wouldn't have got. And I feel like I cover video games pretty comprehensively, but it's just like surprises can come out of nowhere. So just play more indies, everybody. Like I'm so excited that we dedicated most of this episode to like the beauty of the games that are coming out of BitSummit.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a great wrap up on that. Thanks, Arief. But yeah, like, what did you get up to this weekend? We haven't heard from you. We haven't heard about what you've been doing.
Been so sitting here. Can I just share like this is for the listeners that have been like staying through the episode. Can I show you one super big frustration? Like, there's 2 things, and I know we talked about Sarah from Tokyo Productions a lot, and this episode isn't dedicated to Sarah and Tokyo Productions. But number 1, right? I'm eyeing a trip to Japan for Tokyo Game Show, and I've been trying to coordinate my flights to the Pokemon plane, and it's like, oh, like, can I use the Pokemon plane to fly from Singapore and Malaysia to Tokyo, right? But I can't find the dates for the dates that I'm going, so it's like, okay, whatever. Pull up Twitter the day before, like a couple of days before BitSummit, and Sarah posts that like she got the Pokemon plane and she didn't even like book it. It was just like a coincidental thing, and I'm like, you bastard! How dare you?
Not only did she get the Pokemon plane, she got the Demon Slayer plane from Tokyo to Osaka, like back to back. She's like, my gacha luck is out of control. I'm like, welcome to Japan, Sarah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I already got so pissed at Sarah for that, because like, I want the Pokemon plane. It's supposed to be my experience, right? And then and then we get to the show, and like, we're texting. It's like, oh, I'm so happy for you. I'm so excited for you. And then she starts taking these photos, and I'm like, stop it, because I think she saw Brian and was like, hey, I need to take a photo and let's send it to Arief. And then that started a chain reaction of just like sending me WhatsApp. I already see her upload these photos on Instagram, but she sends me like those pictures in WhatsApp as well. I'm like, I see them, Sarah. Like, you don't have to, you're tagging me on Instagram and you're sending it to me on WhatsApp. It's like the FOMO couldn't have been more real. But just again, major love to Sarah, because like all the jokes aside, all these like fun bits, and at the end of the day, I do love it, and it does make me feel very like at home in the developments, the game scene as a whole, being not a developer. But like Sarah is one of those people in the independent scene that's like such a champion for independent games, but also bringing people together. So it was just so cool seeing a lot of her presence at BitSummit as well, and it was super cool that you guys got to meet, because I think
I have one more story about
hit
this.
Hit me.
So as I was describing before, there was this meet to match application that matches people, and I had ignored it for like most of my time, like, because I'm like prepared. I'm busy living my life. I'm a very important person, and I get one email one day, and it says like, oh, Sarah from Tokyo Productions has requested a meeting. I was like, oh, okay. Like, and then I check it, and I even text her. I'm like, Sarah, we can just meet. Like, we don't need to do this. But it was because of her. I do want to say thanks to her. Because of her, I started using it, and that's how I was able to get all these meetings in. But I didn't block out my calendar, and obviously Sarah maybe is excited to meet me or something. But she booked 10 a.m. on Friday morning. And I'm excited to meet her too. I'm like, all right, let's do it. Like, accept and then move on. And then I think about a week from BitSummit, I was like, I need to book my Shinkansen, my train ticket to Kyoto. So in my head, I'm like, okay, 10 a.m., meet Sarah. So I want to be there by like, say, 9:45. It will take me how long to get from my hotel? So, okay, maybe like 9:15. My hotel from Kyoto Station, okay, it was like 8:45. And the train takes like 2.5 hours from Tokyo. All right, 6:30. And then it's like, at that time, there are no buses or trains from my place to like the train station I need to get to, and I'm like going all the way back, and at this point I'm looking at my schedule. I'm like, all right, I'm waking up at 4 a.m.
No words.
But it was so good. Like I was on the train, I'm like, man, for Sarah, she's a great friend. I can't wait to meet her for Sarah. I'm just like, yep. And then I get there. And then like we had a meeting, but like the opening of the meeting was, oh, so nice to meet you, Rino. This is a tote bag. Arief doesn't have it, so here you go.
No, don't do that. I knew it. You got the tote bag?
I got the Coffee Talk tote bag, but
oh my god.
Two things. One, I love the gift. Thank you so much, Sarah. Secondly, I love spiting Arief even more.
Dude, because I text for those at Coffee Talk, one of the biggest independent games of the past couple of years, they showed up for the sequel to the game at PAX East, and they created the tote bags for PAX East, and it was like I think I was like, I need those tote bags. I need somebody to get that. Nobody got those tote bags for me. You know what I mean? I'm so frustrated you have the tote bag.
So that's how she opened, and then at the closing, I was like, oh, great to meet you. Like, catch you later. And then she's like, let's take a photo and send it to Arief.
Why?
That was like probably the most common phrase used of the 3 days. Like, let's take a photo and send it to Arief. When I met Reina, let's take a photo and send it to Arief. Like,
oh my god, I love that so much, but I also am so frustrated right now. Oh my god, I'm out. I can't.
Yeah.
We're not talking. No more talking about Tokyo Productions in general. We're moving forward. Man, that's flipping awesome though. But goddamn, you know how big of a tote bag? You don't even wear tote bags.
I will now.
I'm the tote bag. I'm the tote bag.
You
dude.
are the tote bag guy. You are always with the tote bag. But that's going to be my new thing.
I can't believe this. It's like the photos were enough, but I did not know this. It's so frustrating. We're moving on.
All right. Do you want to tell us anything about what you've been doing, or
no?
Or
I really don't.
like,
no, I mean
this is
the end of the episode.
So
no,
the 17th and last episode
of the 20th podcast. Like our relationship is just completely fractured. No, I just like I really the things that I've been doing can't match up to the BitSummit like experience. I think just in passing, just to share, I've just been recouping from the crazy June that we've had still, which is so funny. But like I've been spending a lot of times reconnecting with like games because I haven't been playing games outside of like, you know, the reviews that we've done and the coverage that we've done. And I just want to say huge thanks to Ben Starr, who's the voice of Clive from Final Fantasy 16, because Ben Starr's been championing this one game called Chained Echoes over the past couple of months. Like you mentioned on the Kind of Funny Games like podcast, but also like tweeting about it and stuff like that. And then my friend August, who I play Final Fantasy 14 with, said, hey, Ben Starr has been talking about it. I'm like, oh yeah, I've heard him talk about it a little bit. It's like, Arief, you should, you know, check it out because I know you've been wanting to play a JRPG. And I started it, and oh my god, this is a little bit premature, but this might be one of my favorite games of this year. Because it is a game. Let me just quickly, like, I want to go in full depth when I finish it, but let me just give the pitch to those that don't know Chained Echoes. It's developed by a German developer, and it's influenced by games such as Xenogear, Terranigma, Secret of Mana, Suikoden 2, Breath of Fire, Legend of Dragoon, and Final Fantasy 6. And when I tell you it is a love letter to JRPGs, it is a love letter to JRPGs. And it has the magic that I've always wanted a modern JRPG in that style to go with. So I've been playing so much Chained Echoes. I'm really excited. I'm about a third way through the game. But yeah, just happy to spend some time playing, again, independent games like that. Yeah, really excited.
Awesome. I looked it up beforehand, and it looks cool. It definitely looks like your kind of thing. So I'm excited to follow you on this journey. Let us know when you can do the full thoughts.
Yeah, let's talk about it next week, maybe. You know, we'll see. We might talk about it next week. Just cram 20 hours in this week. Like, don't sleep. It's like talking about recoup. I'm like not sleeping trying to play this game. Yeah, exactly. So it's good. And then on the opposite side of things, this is just the RF segment for those that are like the selfish RF segment is non-independent, but not a lot of people know this about me. But Rino, are you an esports kind of consumer?
I am not.
Exactly, me neither.
Yeah.
Right? Never got into it, but always kind of appreciated it.
You've become an
There's
esports pro over the weekend.
Yeah, I became. I got signed, everybody.
I mean, I bit some.
All that 100
like...
Thieves merch that I like, it all paid off. No, I just like so many people don't know about this because I never used to stream these types of games, and it was always independent and all that kind of stuff. But I can't express to you how much I love Apex Legends because it's one of those comfort games throughout pre-pandemic and then during the pandemic.
Apex Legends is your comfort game.
I know that sounds really weird, but it is very stressful. It's high octane, pun intended, and like my heart is thumping like as you get. It's really intense, and I get really angry. Yeah. But it's really brought a lot of like friendships closer to mine because me and my squad used to roll like almost every single day, like which is insane to think about. But I have so much love for Apex Legends. It's like one of my most played games over the past couple of years. But I've been watching the ALGS, which is the Apex Legends Global Series. And I've never been an esports person, but this is the game that's roping me into esports. And it's like so exciting to watch the Split 2 finals, which is before the championships that happen later this summer in London. I'm watching it live. And I just like I had this beautiful weekend this past week where I played Chained Echoes on my monitor. I scrolled through your BitSummit like recaps or whatever and getting like text from everybody who's at BitSummit. And then I just streamed the Apex like tournament on my other screen. And it was just so serene and beautiful. And I know Zen from KKP is out there covering that show as well. So
shout out to her and KKP.
Yeah, just so cool to see people like celebrate Apex. But I know again, like Apex people are like wholesome people too, right? You don't have to like put everybody in a box like that. But
I'm just wondering. I can't wait to see Apex Legends DLC at the next Wholesome Direct.
Yeah, exactly. Just wait till they drop a dating sim and then we'll see who's laughing, you know. But no, it just goes to a greater appreciation where like whether it be independent games or whether it be like esports, which is things that we I mean I know we do cover it here, but it's a reminder that when you're in the games industry and when you're covering games and when you love games, there's so much that this industry can offer you. Where I thought it was hilarious, again, where you were at BitSummit covering independent games. I was at home playing Xbox Game Pass, like playing Chained Echoes, but I was also watching esports tournament, Apex esports tournament sponsored by PlayStation. Like the games industry is so wild and there's so much to celebrate. And I just had a great weekend reconnecting with some of that. That's not particularly for content or anything.
Yeah, awesome. That sounds like a great weekend.
It was. Thank you.
Happy for you. Happy for you.
Yeah, but I'm really excited. I mean, what is coming up for you this upcoming week before we close the podcast?
There might be a couple of events just because there's a few stragglers from post BitSummit, people who make their way to Tokyo, and I'd love to, sort of catch up with them and take them around. But also I'm just like on the hook to do a whole ton of articles coverage for BitSummit. So I will actually be head down and staying at home and doing work after such a big weekend. What about yourself?
I will also be writing about BitSummit, but mostly my reflections on not being able to go and how jealous I am about like, here's all the merch that I couldn't get. Like exactly. I'll publish it as a memoir or something. No, we'll see. I'm actually really excited about our next episode of the 20M podcast, but well, you guys, if y'all want to check out maybe a teaser of what's to come, you can check out our socials at 20M podcast on all platforms.
Yes. We will post we'll post it up soon. Just keep an eye out on our social media. It's a very cool episode.
I think it's going to be a really exciting conversation. I'm really looking forward to this next episode of the 20M podcast. But enough about the future episodes of the 20M podcast, everybody. This has been your coverage for BitSummit that Rino was at. And Rino, major love. Any parting words to the audience?
No, I think you summarized it quite well. Play more indie games, everyone. Check out all these indie titles that we will put in the description this time.
Absolutely. This has been a great episode, everybody. Check out our last episode of the 20M podcast where we covered one of our favorite properties of all time, Crash Bandicoot. My God, the clips that we've been putting out for that, for Crash has been hilarious, and it's been such a nostalgic hit. But go check that out. We did a full comprehensive episode on Crash Bandicoot, the state of Crash, our reflections on Crash, but also a review of Crash Team Rumble. Not to be confused with Crash Bash.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
How dare people confuse that with Crash Bash?
Terrible
one of the best
people.
Crash games of all time.
Thank you, everyone. We'll catch you in the next episode. Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.